16-year-old returns to mom after 11 years of judicial alienation. And our Sisters in Solidarity forum this Saturday. A 16-year-old has returned to her mother, but only after 11 whole years of judicial alienation. In an especially horrible custody crisis case, a mother was violently beaten by her husband to the point where she needed surgery. She left him, but then the inevitable occurred. A California judge, infamous for switching custody to abusive and molester fathers, gave him sole custody. This allowed him to disappear with her children and alienate them from her. Conversely, if a mother had disappeared with a man's kids to protect them, she would have been hunted down and imprisoned, and the kids returned to their rightful owner. And it was no thanks to family court the daughter finally came home to her mother. More on that in the takeaways, but first, Elisa's story. Alika met and married her husband in California. She gave birth to David in 2004 and Olivia in 2007. Her husband was extremely controlling and physically, sexually, and emotionally abusive. The physical abuse was terrible. One particularly gruesome assault in 2009 landed her in the hospital with a shattered skull. When asked about the abuse, Alika recounted, quote, "Let's see. The physical side of it for 12 years resulted in him busting my left eardrum, many black eyes. He cut my eyeball once with his wedding ring when he punched me, dislocated my shoulder, and broke my right arm, broken nose a few times. He would always kick me repeatedly once I was down on the ground, which resulted in my kidney splitting open one time, and I had to have surgery to repair it. Many broken ribs so badly that to this day I still have what is called a floating rib because one of my ribs broke off my rib cage and never reattached. Many times after a beating, he would add insult to injury by spitting on me afterwards. The last thing he left me with was from him stomping my head so many times after I was on the ground. It shattered my lower skull, so I now have a lovely 3-inch scar, and no skull on the lower back part of my head, where it attaches to the spinal cord as a reminder. Those physical scars heal up eventually, but it's the mental and emotional that stayed with me for years. Often the unseen scars and wounds are what hurt most. He would call me things like a stupid cunt, which he also called my daughter recently as well. Told me I was worthless and nobody would ever want my stupid ass, and I should be grateful he kept me around. Nothing I ever did was right, nor was it ever good enough. I would clean the house spotless, and he would put on a pair of white latex gloves and go around the whole house until he found a spot with dirt somewhere, and I was yet again a failure and an idiot and worthless. At one point in our marriage, he actually placed bars on the windows in our house and would padlock the doors from the outside while he went to work, leaving me and the kids with no way out until he got home, not even if there was an emergency. After being told these things for so many years, a part of me began to believe maybe he was right and began blaming myself for never being good enough. But after I woke up in the hospital from my head surgery, I immediately asked where were my babies and if they were all right. My mom was with them in the waiting room and brought them in to see me. I remember looking at their beautiful, innocent faces and decided then and there I had to leave him because I did not want my children growing up thinking that love is supposed to hurt." Unquote. Fresh out of the hospital, Elisa fled with her then 5- and 2-year-olds to a DV shelter in Washington state. But she had the children talk to him on the phone regularly. She was likely warned that she would be punished in family court if she did not keep the father in their lives. Shelter folk know about family courts making sure the father remains in the picture, no matter how violent he is. In the summer of 2012, Elisa reluctantly agreed to let them visit him for a month, as the paternal grandparents would be there. He allowed the kids to talk to her every day. But it turns out that was a ruse. He had something major planned and needed to keep in her good graces, until... When Elisa went to the meeting place to pick the kids up, they were not there. He would not answer his phone. She contacted law enforcement in Washington and California in a desperate attempt to find them. Police said there was nothing they could do since there was no custody order. On Valentine's Day the next year, he said she could visit the kids, but when she went to meet them, they weren't there. His lawyer was, who told her he had filed for divorce, but did not say where or when the hearing would be, and he did not give the papers to her. When she called him to find out, he answered, "You stupid bitch." We're nowhere even near Washington. We're not coming. I just wanted to get you in a place my lawyer could find you. Alika did not hear anything from him or her kids for 10 years. But 7 years after that, Elisa somehow found out he had filed for custody in Solano County, California. Judge Cinda Riggins Unger was the custody-stripping villain. Despite Alika not appearing before her, no valid proof of service, and no evidence corroborating the father's claims that Alika was a druggie living on the street, unfit to parent, Judge Unger granted him sole custody. This enabled him to take the kids out of state and alienate them from her, i.e., judicial alienation. We introduced this term and concept in a previous post. NY Mom Commits Suicide After 5 Years of Judicial Alienation from Son. Judge Unger is so infamous for giving kids to abusive and molester fathers that protests against her were common, and a recall petition was launched that got MSM coverage. Even lawyers were telling moms she's biased against women, and if you are in her court, you're screwed. Some of the mothers' stories are here. There have been a ton of women commenting on the Robbing Room site where people can rate judges about how horrible Unger is. After she retired, the page was also retired, but you can still see all the negative comments here where an advocate saved them. See the Substack post for all the links. Alika discovered her David's Facebook page in 2022 that he had recently launched. They were in Utah. She messaged him, but at first he did not trust her. His father had told him there was a restraining order and he was not supposed to have any contact with her. She told him how he and his sister had been wrongly taken. She assured him she had always loved him and had not gone a day without thinking about or wanting to find him. She let him know none of it was his fault and she was glad to know he was okay. He replied, "I knew you didn't abandon us. I love you too, and I'm so glad that you found me." But one day David messaged her that he did not want to talk anymore. She found out later his father had brutally assaulted him, breaking his jaw when he discovered they were in contact. This likely severely traumatized him, as he never contacted her again. This is a common psychological survival mechanism, to identify with the perpetrator. The next year, the mother of a friend of Olivia's contacted Elisa. The mom got a burner phone to Olivia, and they began happily communicating. She said her father had told her Alika had deliberately dropped her on her head when she was a baby, and that is why she was so stupid. She disclosed being drugged and sexually abused. Alika learned that the stepmother was also a major villain in the story, very physically and emotionally abusive. She once choked David until his face turned blue, leaving nail marks on his neck for not washing the dishes right. When he fought her off, the dad came in and slammed his head against the counter for not respecting his stepmother. The father and stepmother had a son together after moving to Utah, whom they favored. David and Olivia were told they weren't part of the family and were not allowed to eat or watch TV with them. When Olivia first got her period, the father told her if she got pregnant, it would be her fault, even if it was from him or her grandfather. The father caught Olivia with the burner phone and took it away, but she had memorized her aunt's number, just in case. Soon after, she ran away to her auntie's. There she learned everything she'd been told about her past was a lie. The father caught her a couple weeks later and forced her back to him, but a fire had been lit in her belly. She was now a 16-year-old determined to get back to her mom. She went to CPS and the police herself in Utah. She told them about the father's and stepmother's abuse and how she wanted to live with her mother. She was, amazingly, able to get a restraining order against her father prohibiting him from finding out where they were living or coming within 500 miles of them. Truly unusual. So, as a result of the dogged determination of a teenager, Alika and Olivia were happily reunited, but only after having been alienated from each other for 11 whole years, essentially her entire childhood. Takeaways. The judge in this case had it easy. She did not need to appoint lackeys to provide her with some false reason for switching custody. She merely had to ignore that Alika had not been properly served and credit the father's lies that she was a drug addict living on the street. She did not have to disregard or conceal evidence the father was physically, sexually, or emotionally abusive, because it never got on the record thanks to her negligence. Had this been a mother lying about proof of service and saying the father was a druggie or unfit, there is no way a judge would simply have given her sole custody. That is a one-way street. Men are largely credited and women discredited, as per the patriarchal mandate driving the system. And if a mother had abducted the kids, there would have been a manhunt for her. In fact, the FBI often investigates cases in which the mother has fled to protect her children, not fathers who actually abduct them. A list of some of those mothers can be found here. Notice that it was no thanks to family court that Alika's daughter was able to return to her. It is a misconception that children ever have the choice of where to live. Family court judges continue to entitle fathers until children age out of the system at 18. Even teens who apply to be emancipated to escape an abusive father must not only get his signature, but also the judge's. Fat chance of that happening. That would defeat the purpose of family court keeping men empowered. Nevada was the only state that allowed 16-year-olds to marry and thus be automatically emancipated with only one parent's signature. But the old boys plugged that loophole as soon as refugees from the family court system began to use it. Finally, in this case, the stepmother and the paternal grandparents aided and abetted the father in stealing the children from their mother and abusing them. This is not uncommon. It is incredible how evil relatives can be, as well as judges. There is so little good news in the custody crisis that it is nice to hear of a success. Occasionally, mothers do get their kids back. Sadly, though, the son is still alienated. These stories are told in the larger context of the crisis to effect change, cultural and political. Women must unite in outrage at what is being done to them after divorce and demand effective reform. But reforms within the family court system are futile. There must be an entirely new system implemented in which judges do not have the power to decide custody. For more info on our proposal for a new system, see the Child Custody Act. Join us at the Women's Coalition and our activist group Sisters in Solidarity if you'd like to help make change. See below. Note: thanks to Teresa at Third Paradigm on Substack for providing info and her advocacy in Alika's case. https jochthirdparadigm.substack.com. In other news, our October Sisters in Solidarity Forum will be this Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. London, Sydney, 6 a.m. the 19th. Sisters in Solidarity is the activism arm of the Women Coalition. If you'd like to engage in activism to end the crisis, please read Sisters and fill out the form to join. Chapter 4 of Everything is Going to Be Okay by Samantha Baldwin is out this week. This novel is about yet another mother caught up in her own family court nightmare. In the last chapter, Amanda marries Damien after a short courtship. While on their honeymoon, he insists they have kids immediately, and she is thrilled when Louis is born a year later. But she is unhappy with his constant partying. Their relationship begins to deteriorate, and Louis shows behavioral problems after spending time alone with Damien. Mandy considers leaving but becomes pregnant again. You may access already posted sections anytime at Women's Coalition News and Views on the top menu bar. Sequential sections of the novel are released every Wednesday, so be sure and subscribe if you haven't yet. And that's it for this week's Custody Crisis Stories. Please subscribe, share, like, and comment. If you appreciate the work of the Women's Coalition, please consider contributing. The links are in the description box. Thanks, and see you next week.